Welcome to a Specialty Hybrids Early Season Agronomy Review. I'm agronomist Ryan Becker. Today we're going to focus on three topics, the first one being the initial growth and development from a seed germinating up to about the V2 seedling time frame. And then we'll discuss some of the key pests and diseases that can be problematic during this growth and development. And finally, we'll finish off with how weather can also potentially impact the normal development process from the time we put it in the ground to when it eventually emerges. So this picture up on the screen is actually from a field that demonstrated some chilling injury. Thus, it's not completely normal, but it did give us a nice sort of time frame of what an emerging seed should look like. You get the radical root established, then comes the shoot. There at the fourth picture, we're getting close to spiking, and then finally we're getting close to the V1 stage as we unfurl that first round leaf. The only real caveat here that's missing is a well-developed seminal rooting system, there where the radical root meets with the kernel. So what should a typical V2 seedling look like? So my red line is the soil line, right about where it's at. The reason I can tell where the soil line is at is that the crown of the plant will set about 3/4 of an inch below the soil line. And from here is where we will establish our nodal rooting system, which is the main root system that will carry the plant through the duration of its life. Now the important connection piece between the emerged seedling and then the seed itself from which it came is the mesocotyl there at the black arrow. It is diseased in this photo. It's supposed to be a whitish healthy looking appearance. Obviously here it's shrunken and black, thus it has been diseased and we're not getting that transportation of nutrients and water from the seed and seminal rooting system. So moving on from that, some typical diseases and pests that we could have affect some of our early developing stuff. Top one is annual grub or Asiatic garden beetle. These can hit both corn and soybeans. Corn is typically less affected by the grub population due to seed-applied insecticides being used. The Asiatic garden beetle is a bit more problematic, but not as widespread as it's restricted to mostly northern Indiana and southern southwest Michigan. Over on the right, we have damage from seed corn maggot on soybeans. Typically not an issue in corn, as again, we typically have seed-applied insecticides to take care of it. But on beans, these did not have an insecticide on them, and thus we had a population of some seed corn maggots that were able to burrow in and prevent these seeds, made them non-viable, and so thus they were not able to emerge. So the little reddish-orange ovals up there in the inside of the top left, that would be the pupae of the actual maggot after it's finished feeding. In the bottom left, this echoes back to the picture previously of that mesocotyl being damaged and hurt off. The most common way that happens is typically due to pythium, and that leads to the damping off, and without any root system established, this seedling is for sure on its way to its death. The last one that you can dig around and find in the soil is a wireworm. It's a segmented orangish brown worm that can feed on corn and beans. Again, a seed-applied insecticide takes care of it, so usually not an issue in corn, but could potentially be on soybeans. Moving into our last topic, which is weather issues that can also have an effect on the emergence process. As discussed previously, that first picture was that chilling injury, or known as the cold imbibition injury, and that's associated with temperature reductions to below 50 degrees within the first 48 hours after planting. So all these seeds came from the same field. It's just the one there on the furthest right was the first part of the field that was planted, so the furthest away from that cold front and the rains, whereas the one along on the left was the part of the field that we finished up at, and thus it was had more issues as it got that cold drink of water a lot earlier in the process. Now, the other one that I typically run into here in eastern Indiana is the crusting of soils due to low organic matter and or hard pounding rains that causes plants to leaf out as they're trying to emerge. So as long as our plants are able to make it, they typically grow out of this. It's just a problem. As you can see, it looks a little bit funky to start, as well as potentially causing plants to lag behind. Thus, they aren't as competitive versus their earlier emerging mates that are right beside them. That concludes today's session. I want to thank you and hope that you have a successful spring.